Thank you for viewing Group 3's conflict mapping presentation on the Occupy Wall Street movement. The movement began on July 14, 2011, when Justine Tunney issued a call to arms. She demanded that Barack Obama ordain a presidential commission tasked with ending the influence money has over our representatives. Protesters marched through the streets of Manhattan to take up residence and to occupy Zuccotti Park in Lower Manhattan. On September 17, 2011, people from all across the United States of America and the world came to protest the blatant injustices of our times perpetuated by the economic and political elites. On February 9, 2012, the OWC's New York City General Assembly passed a list of principles of solidarity, which are points of unity that include, but are not limited to, engaging in direct and transparent participatory democracy, exercising personal and collective responsibility, recognizing individuals' inherent privilege and the influence it has on all interactions, empowering one another against all forms of oppression, redefining how labor is valued, the sanctity of individual privacy, the belief that education is a human right, and making technologies, knowledge, and culture open to all freely access, create, modify, and distribute. The Occupy Wall Street movement posted a list of 13 demands with things like restoration of a living wage, end fossil fuel economy, spend $1 trillion now on infrastructure, forgive everyone's debts across the board, outlaw all credit reporting agencies. Two combining forces began this conflict: income equality among the 1%, combined with the apparent influence of large corporations on elected officials, which resulted in an absolute feeling of injustice. Concurrently, income inequality resulted in deprivation from the loss of wages, increased mortgages, and defaulted credit cards and student loan debts. This sense of injustice was amplified by the buyouts of banks and other companies, caused by belligerent culture, resulting in the 2008 financial crisis. These led to a situation of contested resources within the United States. There exists an absolute separation between the 1% and the 99%. The OWS protesters, the 99%, were in a different socio-economic class than the 1%, or the wealthiest of the population. The larger corporations sought to maintain the status quo, while demands were made by the OWS protesters. This was further complicated by the incompatible roles between the protesters and the 1%ers. The protesters were mainly middle to lower class society seeking to work and pay their mortgage. The role of the 1% companies and their CEOs were to maximize their profit margins and to keep stockholders happy. This also indicates an incompatibility of values. The status quo was desired by the 1%, while the 99% idealized the equitable distribution of resources. This perfect storm of income inequality, injustices, and finally contested resources resulted in the Occupy Wall Street protests. These protests were demonstrative of incompatible goals between the OWS and larger corporations. On a side note, whole-part differential, task specialization, differences in size and technology, and the community system incompatibility, while they were possibly a minor contributing factor to the conflict, they weren't found to be significant for this analysis. Though the Occupy Wall Street protests have ended, the movement has spurred a national conversation in the United States. Since then, we have debates on changes in the minimum wage, financial reform, student debt relief, and have woken up the citizens of the U.S. to their need to investigate the mortgage terms, investments, and credit. The Occupy Wall Street movement demonstrated civil disobedience in the most modern of available settings. The OWS movement highlighted the disparity between the 1% and the 99%, sparking protests and a call for civil change. Marx's theory, then, is satisfied. Those who are in charge fight for the status quo, while those with perceived little power fight, or protest, for change. Thank you for your time. Please take a minute and consider these questions.